Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, had been sold by his brothers as a slave to Egypt, because they were jealous of him and the favouritism his father seemed to show him. And now Joseph in Egypt had been taken into the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Joseph was handsome, he was young and strong and intelligent, and Potiphar soon realised he was also a very gifted man, and appointed him to run his household. But Potiphar's wife desired Joseph for herself, and pressed him to lie with her. He refused, saying, "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" But one day she grabbed him while there was no one else around. "Lie with me!" He left his garment in her hand and fled. And so she accused him to her husband, saying, "This man has mocked me." And her husband threw him in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favour in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper. And so it came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the same place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, so that they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers, who were with him in the custody of his lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they said to him, "We each have had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it." So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please." Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, "Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, according to the former manner, when you were his butler. But please remember me when it is well with you. Show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this place. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here, that they should put me into the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." So Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head from you, and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we have read together Genesis chapter 40, the account of Joseph in prison, the Lord being with him and the Lord blessing everything that he did. Now, while I've said that Joseph was bright and intelligent and handsome and diligent, yes, these were his characteristics, but that is not enough for success in this world. Success requires the Lord's blessing. The Lord resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. The Lord had a purpose for Joseph, and this was the Lord's way of first of all preparing Joseph for the task that was to lie ahead of him, but also to bring him to the position where he would fulfill that task. And again, the focus here is dreams, and Joseph's statement, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Joseph's father, Jacob, had had a dream when he went north, leaving his mother and father and brother, and slept at Bethel. He dreamed of a ladder reaching up to heaven, and at the top of the ladder he saw the glory of the Lord. And he received a promise in his dream, and he vowed to the Lord that if the Lord would bring him back, the Lord would be his God. And the Lord did bring him back. And so it was that, having gained a family and much possessions, and having been brought back, Jacob had spent a lot of time with Joseph. The older brothers had been out looking after the livestock. They had not had such attention from their father, because when they were young, Jacob was busy looking after Laban's livestock. But now that they were a little older than Joseph, not that much older, up to 14 years older, but they were in their teens and 20s when Joseph was a little boy, they could take on the responsibility, and Jacob spent time with Joseph. And so Joseph had been well educated by his father. Not only educated in the things of the world, though, educated in the knowledge of God. And Joseph had chosen to walk in the ways of God. And then the Lord had given Joseph the dreams that he would rule over his brothers, and indeed over his father and mother. The brothers, of course, were unimpressed that Joseph was their father's favourite, and unimpressed of the dreams that Joseph had. And so, in their opposition, they had sold him to Egypt. But this, of course, was the way in which God would fulfill the dream, as we shall see as we proceed. Interpretations of things, the meaning of things, belong to God. God has a purpose and a plan, and he knows what the future holds, and he reveals it to his servants. And so in this account, Joseph, recognized for his diligence and the Lord's blessing upon him, is serving in the house of the captain of the guard, looking after the prisoners. And the captain of the guard, with absolute confidence in Joseph, does not inquire into any of the things that are in his responsibility. And so Joseph attends to the chief butler and the chief baker, who have been confined in the prison by Pharaoh. And when they dream, he sees their despair. He introduces them to the God of heaven. Whatever Joseph does, he does for the glory of God and in the name of the Lord. And so he says, interpretations belong to God. Tell the dreams to me, please. He is acting as the Lord's servant. They relate the dreams, and Joseph interprets them, and the interpretations become true. In 3 days, Pharaoh attends to these 2 men. One he restores to his butlership again, and the other is hanged. And so the word of the Lord is vindicated. But the chief butler does not remember Joseph before Pharaoh. But the Lord is still with Joseph. The Lord has not forgotten him in prison.